It will take you only 17 minutes to destroy the enemy fleet that has terrified the entire galaxy for thousands of years. This is a story about how humanity has shown why it is worth being afraid not of the strongest, but of the smartest. Astra Valian walked through the halls lined with plastosilicon in the Concordat of Worlds building. Her boots clicked softly on the shiny floor as she walked towards the central hall. She has been the voice of humanity in this place for 10 cycles now. 10 long cycles of watching the galaxy's most powerful beings talk and talk as worlds burned in flames. The Concordat Hall rose higher than any building on the century. Representatives of the most ancient races in the galaxy sat in 12 massive chairs. Each creature looked different from the others. The crystallines were like living gems that sang when they spoke. The cyanids were tall and thin, with huge black eyes that seemed to look straight into the soul. The machines had metal bodies that clicked and buzzed with every movement. Astra took her place in a small human chair. It stood lower than the others, reminding that humans were the newest members of this ancient community. She opened her datapad and looked at the agenda. Another border dispute. Another trade dispute. Another planet under attack. While the Concordat was discussing the proper procedures, the voice of the hierarch of the crystallines filled the hall, sounding like music. Today we are discussing the current situation between the Fomorian Dominion and the Wartox Confederation. Ambassador Ectron will present the Dominion's position. A massive creature covered in dark scales rose up. Ambassador Ectron's voice was deep and booming. The Fomorian Dominion only seeks to protect its borders. The Wartoxes are moving weapons across the disputed area. We had no choice but to respond. Astra's hands tightened on her datapad. She knew that reply in the Fomorian language meant that 3 entire worlds had fallen silent last week. Billions of sentients have simply disappeared. Recent reports from these worlds showed civilian transports trying to escape. Ships full of families, children, and the elderly who have never harmed anyone. The Wartox representative looked like a giant butterfly made of light. Colors danced around her body as she spoke. The Fomors are lying. They were refugee ships. Families fleeing the war zone. They destroyed everything that moved. Order. The hierarch's song became sharper. We have to follow the proper procedure. Both sides will provide evidence. We will consider everything carefully. A decision will be made in due course. Astra stood up. What time is it? There was silence in the hall. All eyes turned to her small figure. I asked a simple question, Astra said. How long will this decision take? The metal body of the machine representative buzzed, processing her words. Previous cases of this nature required an average of 247 standard days for proper review. 247 days. Astra's voice was flat, but everyone could hear the anger in it. While you're spending 247 days reviewing the evidence, how many more worlds are going to die? How many more refugee ships will turn into stardust? The psychic field of the cyanid ambassador pressed down on Astra's mind. She felt his disapproval like icy water in her veins. Ambassador Valian, the emotional nature of your species is well known. But diplomacy requires patience. The world cannot be rushed. The world. Astra displayed holographic images above her datapad. The hall was filled with pictures of burning worlds, exploding ships in the darkness of space. This is your world. 47 billion sentients have died in the last 5 cycles while you were holding meetings. The images changed. The faces of the children looked at the assembled aliens. Families hugging each other while their world burned around them. The old grandfather is Wartox, trying to shelter his grandchildren from falling debris. These sentient beings died waiting for your justice, Astra said. They died while you were filling out reports, setting up hearings, and discussing proper protocols. The crystalline body of the hierarch of crystallines pulsed with a soft light. We understand your disappointment, Ambassador, but order must be maintained. The galaxy has known the world for millennia because we follow established procedures. Whose world is it? Astra's voice cut through the hall like a blade. A world of strong people who can protect themselves? What about the world of refugee families? What about the world of kids who just wanted to grow up? She moved closer to the center of the room. Every alien gaze followed her movement. I've been sitting in this chair for 10 cycles, Astra said. 10 cycles, watching you talk while people die. 10 cycles of filling out genocide reports while you discuss punctuation marks in treaty documents. 10 cycles, begging you to act while the killers laugh at your procedures. The Fomorian ambassador's scales rustled, which might have been laughter. A person is talking about an action. But what can your tiny fleet due against thousands of Dominion ships. Your people are new to the stars. You don't know anything about the real war. Astra stopped. She turned to face the massive alien. You're right. We are new to the stars. We only came out here 50 standard years ago, but we've been studying warfare for 50,000 years. The hall buzzed with confused whispers. Astra raised her voice. Every species in this Concordat has evolved beyond violence. You've outgrown your aggressive instincts. You've become logical or spiritual, or you've joined your minds together. You've forgotten what it means to fight for what's right. She activated another hologram. This one showed the history of the century. Ancient warriors, medieval knights, soldiers storming beaches, pilots diving through the sky filled with anti-aircraft guns. People have never forgotten, Astra said. We remember what it takes to stop evil. We remember that sometimes talking is not enough. Sometimes you have to fight. The psychic field of the cyanides pressed harder. Violence only breeds more violence. The primitive instincts of your kind will doom you all. Maybe, Astra said, but at least we're going to die trying to save innocent people instead of filling out paperwork about their deaths. She returned to her chair and gathered her things. The whole room watched in silence. Where are you going? The hierarch asked. Astra looked at the crystal creature. Home. To tell my people that the Concordat of Worlds has abandoned its duty to protect the innocent. To tell them that if anyone is going to stop the Fomorian Dominion, it will be us. You cannot act without the approval of the Concordat, said the representative of the machine. This is contrary to all established protocols. Then change your protocols, Astra said. Article 7 of the Galactic Pact gives any member race the right to act independently if the Concordat fails in its duty to uphold justice. The hall exploded with shocked voices. Article 7 was written into the constituent documents, but was never used. It was intended as a last resort, a way for desperate species to protect themselves if the system failed them. You wouldn't dare, growled Ambassador Fomor. Your pathetic fleet will be destroyed in a matter of days. Astra stopped at the door of the hall. She looked back at the assembled aliens with their ancient wisdom, comfortable chairs, and endless treatments. Ambassador Ektron, she said softly, your Dominion has 3 days to begin evacuating all occupied territories. All war criminals will surrender for trial. All stolen resources will be returned. And if we refuse? Fomor's scales rustled with amusement. Astra's smile was as cold as space. Then you'll find out why humans are the only species in this galaxy that still remembers how to hunt. She left the room, leaving behind 10 cycles of diplomatic service and 47 billion reasons for war. Behind her, the Concordat exploded into chaos as the newest members of the galaxy announced their intention to do something no one else would dare. Stop the monsters, no matter what it takes. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Humanity applied Article 7. For the first time in 3,000 years, a member of the Concordat was going to war without permission. On Century, President Kira Shin stood in a circular office, scanning reports from all over human space. Every colony, every station, every ship asked the same question. Are they really going to fight the entire Fomorian Dominion? Admiral Leo River entered the room, carrying a datapad full of fleet reports. His gray uniform was covered with ribbons from humanity's minor border conflicts. He had never fought in a real war, but he had studied every battle in galactic history. Ma'am, he said softly, the fleet is ready. Shin looked at him with tired eyes. How ready can we be, Leo? The Fomors have 1,000 ships. We have 87. The numbers don't tell the whole story, River replied. We have been preparing for this day ever since we joined the Concordat. While they were laughing at our primitive ways, we were learning. We took their technology and made it better. Shin went to the window and looked out at the city. Millions of people lived their lives unaware that their government had just declared war on an empire that could turn the century to glass. The Concordat will try to stop us, she said. Let them try, River replied. Astra was right. 47 billion sentients are dead because these aliens care more about procedures than they do about lives. It's time for someone to remind the galaxy what justice looks like. In the space above Century, the human fleet was preparing to depart. These were not the massive dreadnoughts that other species built. Human ships were smaller, faster, and designed for the kind of warfare that had been waged in the oceans and skies of the Century for centuries. Here is a rewritten version of the second part of your text, with the names, titles, and details changed to match the first part. Captain Alice Fox stood on the bridge of her destroyer, the USS Justice. Around her, Crew members were conducting a final check of systems that no other species would have been able to recognize. Swarm fighters that could split up and attack from 1,000 directions. AI systems that have been trained in every battle. A weapon that combined human engineering with alien technology. "Captain," her tactical officer shouted, "we are receiving a transmission from the Fomorian Dominion." The main screen was filled with the image of General Tractor, the butcher of the refugee worlds. His scales were darker than those of his ambassador, and were scarred from a dozen campaigns. There was the cold intelligence of a predator in his eyes. "So do people think they can play war?" he said, his voice booming with amusement. "Your ambassador made threats in the halls of the Concordat. Now you have to back them up with blood." Alice stepped forward. "General Tractor, you have been identified as a war criminal responsible for the genocide. Surrender now and face trial, or face the consequences." The former general's eyes sparkled, and he threw his massive head back and laughed. "The court, little man? Do you know how many species have tried to challenge the Dominion? Their bones are drifting in the void around the dead worlds. How many of them were human?" Alice asked softly. The general's laughter stopped. "Not a single one. But it won't save you. I've destroyed entire civilizations. Your handful of toy ships will burn down, just like all the others." "General," Alice said, her voice as hard as a rock, "you have killed 47 billion innocent people, men, women, and children, who have never raised a weapon against you. You've turned the refugee ships into piles of wreckage. You fought against the defenseless and called it a victory." She moved closer to the screen. "But these people weren't defenseless because they were weak. They were defenseless because they were good. They believed in peace, law, and justice. They thought the galaxy had outgrown monsters like you." There was silence on the bridge, broken only by the hum of the engines. "We haven't outgrown the monsters," Alice continued. "We just got better at hiding from them. Well, General, your time to hide is up." The tractor's scales darkened with rage. "You dare to threaten the Fomorian Dominion? We have ruled this sector for 1,000 years. And in 3 days, your Dominion will be just a memory," Alice said. "Unless you start evacuating space immediately." "Never," the tractor roared. "I will hunt down every human ship. I will burn down your colonies. I will make your homeworld a monument to the cost of defying the Dominion." Alice nodded slowly. "Thank you, General. You've just given us everything we need." The transmission has ended. Around the bridge, the crew members looked at their captain with confusion. "Ma'am," the tactical officer asked, "what did he give us?" Alice smiled, but there was no warmth in her smile. "A declaration of war broadcast on all frequencies. The entire galaxy has just heard how the Fomorian Dominion is threatening to commit genocide against humanity. The Concordat can't stop us now, even if they wanted to." She turned to face her carriage. "Every ship, every station, every communication post in known space has just heard how this monster promised to burn down our worlds. We are no longer aggressors. We are the defenders." The communications officer, Lieutenant Hayes, looked up from his post. "Captain, we are receiving messages from all over the galaxy. The Wartoxes are asking for protection. The machines want to provide intelligence support. Even some of the smaller Concordat species are offering help." "What about the big players?" asked Alice. "Official silence," Hayes replied, "but unofficial channels are buzzing. It seems that many of them are tired of watching the Fomorian Dominion kill civilians while the Concordat does nothing." Alice nodded. "Good. We're going to need all the friends we can find." Admiral River's voice came over the fleet's communications system. "All ships, this is Admiral River. In 36 hours, we will make the jump to the Vega 3 system. Intelligence indicates that the Fomers have a large supply depot there, protected by one of their fortress platforms." The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in the minds of the entire fleet. "People of the century," he continued, "we are not going to war for the sake of conquest, not for the sake of glory, not for the sake of resources. We're fighting because someone has to. We are fighting because 47 billion innocent souls are crying out for justice. We're fighting because if it's not us, then who is?" Alice looked around her bridge, looking at the faces of her crew. Young men and women from all corners of human space, united by one goal. "The Fomorian Dominion thinks we're primitives playing at war," River's voice continued. "They think that our small fleet and strange tactics make us weak. They will soon learn the difference between a species that has outgrown violence and a species that has chosen to master it." On the main screen, the starfield began to shift as the human fleet prepared to jump. 87 ships against 1,000. It should have been suicide. But as Captain Alice watched her crew prepare for battle, she remembered something Astra had said in her last speech at the Concordat. Fomors had never fought humans before. They had never encountered a species that had spent its entire history learning how to turn a disadvantage into a victory. "All stations are reporting readiness, Captain," her senior officer announced. Alice sat down in her command chair. "Signal the fleet. Start the jump." The stars stretched out in a line of light, and humanity went to war. Behind them, the century revolved peacefully in the void, being home to billions of people who had just learned that their government was planning to fight the Empire. Only with courage, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to let evil win will the galaxy soon learn why humans were the only species that told stories about heroes. The Vega, 3 defense platform hung in space like a dark metallic moon. It was 5 kilometers across, bristling with weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. For 200 cycles, she guarded the main supply route between the territory of the Fomorian Dominion and the war zone, where they destroyed the Warthocks. Inside the platform's command center, Commander Vex stared at his screens with a bored expression. Another day of watching empty space, waiting for the enemies that never came. The local alien species have learned not to challenge the Fomor might. Their ships were turned away long before they reached the range of the weapon. "Sir," one of his officers shouted, "we have contacts at the edge of the system. Small ships moving fast." Fess's scales stirred with mild interest. "Pirates again. How many?" 30 ships, sir. But they don't run away. They're coming right at us." The commander got up from his chair. 30 ships attacking the fortress platform. Either these aliens were insane, or they didn't understand what they were facing. "Open the communication channel," he ordered. "Let me talk to whoever is leading this suicide mission." The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of an alien warship. Vex had never seen anything like it. The crew looked like several of the species he knew, but there was something different about them. They moved with a controlled energy that reminded him of hunting predators. A woman dressed in what looked like a military uniform walked onto the screen. "Fomor platform, this is Captain Alice Fox from the Century spaceship Justice. You are ordered to evacuate this system immediately." Fess's jaw dropped in surprise. Then he started laughing. "The Century spaceship? You people are the primitives of the Concordat." "It's us," Alice replied calmly. "And you have 10 minutes to start evacuation procedures." The Fomor commander laughed even louder. 10 minutes? Little man, this platform has enough firepower to destroy your entire pathetic fleet. Do you have any idea what you're facing? "A supply depot disguised as a fortress," Alice said. "The crew is approximately 12,000. The main weapon designed to defeat large, slow-moving targets at a great distance. Minimal defense systems, because no one has been crazy enough to get close to you in 2 centuries. Fess stopped laughing. The man has just described the exact characteristics of his station. "How do you know that?" "Stop it," he demanded. "We've been studying you for 10 cycles, Alice replied. "Every fight, every tactic, every weakness. While you were laughing at primitive people, we were learning how to kill you." On the tactical display, the human ships were diverging in a pattern that Vex did not recognize. Instead of forming into the traditional battle line that galactic military doctrine required, they scattered like insects. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "they're breaking formation. Individual ships take different approach vectors. I can't get a solution to target all of them." Fess studied the display with growing concern. The human ships were too small and too fast for his main weapon to effectively track them. They dived and swerved through space like atmospheric fighters, not like starships. "Launch all defensive squadrons," he ordered. "Let's see how they can handle real fighters." 200 Fomor interceptors broke out of the launch compartments of the platform. They were fast, well-armed, and piloted by pilots with decades of experience. They were supposed to tear the human squad apart in a matter of minutes. Instead, something impossible happened. Every human ship suddenly split into pieces. Where there were 30 ships, there were now thousands of small craft. Tiny fighter jets, no bigger than atmospheric planes, swarmed through space like angry wasps. "What is it?" demanded Vex. "Ships don't work like that." On the screen, Captain Alice smiled grimly. "Carrier doctrine, Commander. Something that your people have never developed. Each of our ships carries 100 fighters. Each fighter is piloted by a man who has learned to fly in the atmosphere of the century, dodging mountains, storms, and other aircraft at supersonic speeds." The Fomor interceptors tried to engage the swarm, but they were designed for ship-to-ship combat. Their tactics assumed that the enemies would behave predictably, following established patterns. The human fighters didn't follow any patterns. They dived, rolled, and spun in space, as if they were flying through the sky of a century. They used debris and asteroids for shelter. They coordinated attacks without any apparent connection, moving together like a school of predatory fish. "Sir," the weapons officer shouted, "our interceptors have been destroyed. These people are flying like maniacs." Fess watched in horror as his entire defensive squadron was torn apart. People weren't just the best pilots. They thought about the battle in a completely different way. Where the Fomor doctrine emphasized flying in formation and coordinated attacks, people were constantly improvising. Every pilot made decisions too quickly for any enemy to predict them. "Aim your fighters at the defense of the platform," he ordered. "We're trying, sir, but they're not standing still, and there are too many of them." On the display, swarms of human fighters had already reached the platform itself. They dove between the massive gun turrets like insects crawling over a sleeping giant. Explosions began to blossom throughout the station's hull as fighter jets struck critical systems with surgical precision. "How do they find our weaknesses?" "These systems are classified," demanded Vex. Captain Alice Fox's voice came over the comm channel. "We told you, Commander. We've been studying you. Every battle you've ever been in, every ship you've ever built, every tactical manual your kind has ever written. We know exactly where to hit." The platform shuddered as its main power grid shut down. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across the command center. "Half of the defensive systems have already been destroyed." "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we receive requests for change from all over the platform. Engineering says we have maybe an hour before life support fails." Vex stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His impregnable fortress was being torn apart by fighter jets no bigger than shuttles operated by aliens, whom everyone considered primitive newcomers. "How?" he whispered. Captain Alice heard him. "Because you forgot something, Commander. You and every other species in this galaxy have evolved by going over your aggressive instincts. You have become civilized. You have learned to follow the rules, protocols, and established procedures." The human fighters continued their deadly dance around the dying platform. "People have never forgotten how to hunt," Alice continued. "We never stopped learning new ways of fighting. While you were building bigger guns and thicker armor, we were learning how to think faster, move faster, and hit harder. We have not outgrown the war. We've perfected it." Vexeter looked around his ruined command center. Half of his crew was dead or injured. The platform was dying around them. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrible thought was growing. If 30 human ships could do this to his fortress, what could their entire fleet do to the Dominion? "We give up," he said softly. "It's too late for that," Alice replied. "You had a chance to evacuate. Now you can send a message to General Tractor." The body of the platform began to crack as the human fighters completed their work. The air burst into space, carrying debris and bodies into the void. Captain Alice's voice cut through the chaos one last time. "Tell your general that the hunting season has begun. Tell him that 47 billion dead civilians are sending greetings." The Vega 3 defense platform, the pride of the Fomorian Dominion's border fortifications, fell apart 4 hours after the humans arrived. The debris formed a new asteroid field around the system star, a monument to the galaxy's first lesson in human warfare. And on the largest piece of debris visible to any ship that passed through the system, there were words written in perfect Fomor script. 47 billion. We remember. News of the destruction of Vega 3 spread through the subspace networks faster than any ship could fly. The oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy began to realize that everything had changed. People didn't just go to war, they were going to win. News of the destruction of the Vega 3 platform spread across the galaxy like shock waves on water. In the halls lined with plastosilicon, the Concordat of worlds, ancient beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations stared at their screens in disbelief. The people of the century have done the impossible. They destroyed a fortress that had stood unconquered for 2 centuries. They did this with a small part of the ships that they thought was needed, and they did it in 4 hours. On the Fomor homeworld, General Tractor stood in his war room, surrounded by tactical displays showing the wreckage of his border fortifications. His scales had darkened almost to black from rage, and something he hadn't felt in decades. Fear. "How many survivors are there?" "Stop it," he demanded. His assistant, a young Fomor with nervous eyes, was rummaging through the reports. "Less than 300, General. People turned off life support, but left the escape capsules operational. All the survivors report the same thing. Humans didn't fight like any species we've encountered. Their ships were breaking up into smaller units. Thousands of fighters, moving independently, but somehow coordinated. Our defensive doctrine had no opposition to such tactics. The tractor's claws scraped against the metal table. Impossible. Our tactics have defeated every enemy for thousands of years. Sir, another officer spoke hesitantly. The survivors say that people seem to know exactly where to hit. They targeted systems that our own engineers considered unattainable. The general turns to face his staff. Are you telling me that these primitives somehow obtained classified technical specifications for our most secure installations? They didn't need to steal information. Analysis of the wreckage shows that they understood our technology better than we did. They found weaknesses in our designs that our own people had missed. The tractor stared at the holographic display of the destroyed platform. His confidence was cracking like ice under pressure. Send the Third Fleet to the Mars 5 system. If people want to play war, we'll show them what a real naval battle looks like. Across the galaxy, other species were having similar conversations. The Vartok refugees, who had been fleeing the Fomor aggression for years, wept with relief. Someone was finally fighting for them. Someone was finally making the Dominion pay for their crimes. But even the Wartoks were worried about human methods. The footage from Vega 3 showed a kind of war they had never imagined. Fast, brutal, accurate. People did not give mercy, did not accept surrender, did not offer mercy. They simply destroyed everything that could fight back and moved on. At trading posts and diplomatic stations throughout known space, members of the lesser species whispered among themselves. Some called people saviors. Others are terrifying. Everyone agreed that the balance of galactic power had shifted in 4 short hours. The machines calculated probabilities with their mechanical brains and found results that disrupted their logical processes. If human performance on Vega 3 was representative of their true capabilities, defeating the Fomorian Dominion was not just possible. It was mathematically inevitable. The psionics tried to read human emotions across interstellar distances and recoiled from what they found. These people had no joy in destruction, no pleasure in killing. But they felt something even more frightening: absolute determination. They will not stop until every war criminal is brought to justice, regardless of the cost. Crystallines who transcended physical concerns millennia ago have discovered that their crystalline forms resonate with frequencies they have not felt since the brutal youth of their own kind. People reminded them of something they had forgotten: the terrifying beauty of righteous anger. Admiral River stood on the bridge of his flagship, reviewing the reports of the first encounter. Around him, his staff was processing intelligence gathered from Vega 3 survivors and preparing for the next phase of operations. "Admiral," his intelligence officer reported, "distant sensors have detected the Third Fleet of Fomors moving towards Mars 5. Approximately 200 ships, including several heavy cruisers." River nodded calmly. "How long does it take them to get there?" 18 hours, sir." "How long does it take our fleet to get to the system?" 12 hours, sir. We will be in position long before them." River studied the tactical display. The Mars 5 system was perfect for what he had in mind. A binary star system with complex gravitational fields that most species avoided for military operations. Too unpredictable, too dangerous for traditional naval maneuvers. Ideal for people who have learned to glide through gravitational waves, as the ancient sailors of the century sailed through ocean currents. "Signal the fleet," River ordered. "All ships begin gravity calculations for gravity slingshot maneuvers. We will show the Fomors what human physics is capable of." 6 hours later, Admiral River's fleet hung in the shadow of Mars A, the larger of the 2 stars in the system. The ships were arranged in a pattern that would have baffled any traditional military observer, scattered seemingly randomly across the gravity fields of the system, but there was nothing random about their positions. Each ship was located at a carefully calculated point where the gravitational forces of both stars could be used to accelerate to incredible speeds. It was a tactic that no other species had ever tried, because it required lightning-fast accuracy and the ability to perform complex calculations under fire. The third Fomor fleet arrived exactly at the time predicted by intelligence: 200 massive ships in perfect formation, moving with a slow majesty that has terrified enemies for centuries. Admiral River watched them approach on his tactical display and felt something that could have been pity. These aliens still thought of war the way humans fought in the age of sailboats. Big ships, heavy guns, formations that looked impressive but moved like glaciers. "Admiral," his communications officer announced. "We are receiving a transmission from the Fomor fleet." An image of Fleet Commander Morak appeared on the screen, a veteran whose scales bore the marks of a dozen campaigns. His eyes shone with confidence as he studied what appeared to be a disjointed, disorganized human squad. "The Admiral is a man," boomed Morak. "I have been ordered by General Tractor to offer you one chance to surrender. Your stealthy attack on Vega 3 was clever, but now you're facing a real fleet in real combat. Obey now, and your death will be swift." River stepped forward, his face calm. "Commander, I have a counteroffer. Turn over your war criminals for trial. Evacuate all occupied territories, and your death will be swift." Fomor laughter shook the speakers on the bridge. "You have 30 ships scattered like debris all over this system. I have 200 of the best warships ever built. It's not courage, man. It's suicide." River smiled, and something in that expression made several of the bridge officers step back. "Commander, you're about to learn the difference between a species that builds bigger guns and a species that builds smarter tactics." He interrupted the transmission and turned to his crew. "All ships, begin gravity acceleration. Let's show these aliens how humans learned to hunt whales." What happened next became a legend throughout the galaxy. Human ships did not attack the enemy fleet, as required by traditional doctrine. Instead, they dived towards the binary stars, using gravity slingshots to achieve speeds that should have been impossible for ships of their size. They flew out of stellar orbit like guided meteors, moving too fast for the guidance of the Fomor systems. But speed was only part of the human advantage. During the acceleration, each ship released clouds of nanobots, which adapted to the enemy's countermeasures in real time. The fleet coordinated its movements using musical principles. Each captain improvised a response to local conditions, while following the main theme of the battle plan. Commander Morak watched in growing horror as his perfectly organized fleet was torn apart by ships that moved like living creatures. The humans attacked from impossible angles, using the system's gravitational fields to change directions in a way that contradicted everything he knew about space combat. When the human ships took damage, they didn't retreat to lick their wounds. They accelerated even more, turning into kinetic weapons that pierced Fomor armor like bullets through paper. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they released repaired drones that cannibalized destroyed enemy ships to build new weapons on the fly. 17 minutes after the start of the battle, the third Fomor fleet ceased to exist. Commander Morak found himself alone on his dying flagship, watching the human fleet regroup in the distance. His proud formation was nothing more than expanding clouds of debris and a receding atmosphere. Admiral River's voice came over the emergency frequency. "This message is for General Tractor and any other Fomor commanders who are listening. You have 45 more evacuation systems left. Every day you postpone, we destroy another fleet. We remember every civilian you kill. Every war crime you commit, we pay back with interest." The transmission switched to a wider frequency that could be heard by every species in the galaxy. "Help is coming to all those who suffered from the Fomor aggression. To all those who benefit from the Fomor crimes, your business is ending. To all those who are wondering if justice still exists in this galaxy, we are your answer." The message ended, leaving the galaxy to ponder the new reality. Humans weren't just fighting the Fomorian Dominion. They took it apart piece by piece, fleet by fleet. 6 cycles after the first human ship jumped to Vega 3, the Fomorian Dominion was dying. Not from one great battle, but from 1,000 smaller wounds that bled, draining their strength system by system, fleet by fleet, until only their homeworld remained. General Tractor stood in the ruins of his command center, watching as reports streamed in from across what had once been the galaxy's most formidable military power. Every installation, every fleet, every fortified world, everything was systematically destroyed by an enemy that fought like no other species in galactic history. People kept their word. Every day, when the Fomors postponed the evacuation, they lost another system. Every civilian they killed out of spite brought swift and terrible retribution. They tried everything: negotiations, bribes, threats to other species, even attempts to attack the Century itself. Nothing was working. The human fleet seemed to be everywhere at once. When the Fomor forces gathered to fight back, people simply bypassed them and destroyed their supply lines. When they spread out to protect several targets, the humans concentrated their forces and destroyed the isolated squads one by one. It was like trying to fight smoke. People were never where you expected them to be, but always where they could do the most damage. Sir, his assistant approached cautiously. The last evacuation ships have left the outer colonies. We are receiving surrender requests from the remaining fleet commanders. The tractor's scales have faded to gray in recent cycles. He looked older than his years, exhausted from constant defeats at the hands of an enemy he still did not fully understand. How many ships do we have left? He asked quietly. 47, sir. All are damaged, most have few supplies. 47 is the same number as the billions they killed. Tractor wondered if people had planned this irony, or if the universe just had a sense of justice. And the people? Unknown, sir. Our intelligence network has been completely compromised. They seem to know our every move before we make it. Through the cracked windows of the command center, Tractor could see the lights of the capital of his home world. Billions of Fomor civilians went about their lives, unaware that their Dominion's military might had been reduced to fewer ships than a small border patrol. Sir, the communications officer shouted. We received transmission on all frequencies. These are people. The main display flickered, revealing a familiar figure. Astra Valian looked older than when she left the Concordat Hall 6 cycles ago. Her hair was grayer, her face more scarred, but her eyes still burned with the same determination that started this war. General Tractor, she said simply. It's over. The Fomor leader straightened his massive figure. Even in defeat, he will retain his dignity. Ambassador, I should have known that you would personally want to deliver the last ultimatum. This is not an ultimatum, General. This is a suggestion. Tractor's eyes narrowed. What's the offer? Astra stepped aside, showing a holographic display of the Fomor homeworld. Red dots marked the positions of human ships throughout the system. Hundreds of them surrounded the planet like a network of stars. My fleet can destroy every military installation on your world within an hour, Astra said. We can block your system until your people starve. We can turn your homeworld into another monument to human determination. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Or you can make another choice. Surrender yourself and your remaining war criminals for trial. Accept responsibility for the genocide you have committed. Help us build something better from the ashes of your dominion. The tractor laughed bitterly. The best? You have destroyed everything that we have been building for thousands of years. What could be better than this? A galaxy where refugee ships don't turn into cemeteries, replied Astra. Where children can grow up without fear of orbital bombardment. Where justice means more than filling out the proper paperwork. The general studied her image on the screen. And if I refuse? Astra's expression did not change. Then we will demonstrate why evolution has given humans both the capacity for war and the wisdom to know when it is needed. Before the tractor could respond, sirens wailed through the command center. His tactical officer shouted over the noise. Sir, something is wrong with the star. Massive energy readings from the main one. The display switched to the system's appearance. The Fomor sun, a stable yellow star that had warmed their homeworld for billions of years, began to pulse with unnatural light. What is it? The tractor demanded an answer. Astra's voice answered him. This is a star manipulation device. Human technology based on the principles that we learned by studying the crystalline resonance of crystallines. One ship located at the North Pole of the star uses harmonic frequencies to destabilize the nuclear fusion reaction. The general's scales turned white with terror. Would you destroy an entire star system? Billions of innocent civilians? No, Astra said firmly. But we would threaten, just like you threatened to destroy refugee worlds full of innocent civilians. The difference is that we won't actually do it. She leaned forward, and Tractor saw something in her eyes that scared him more than the threat to his star. But you don't know that for sure, do you, General? You don't know if humans are capable of genocide, because we're not like any species you've ever fought. We can bluff, or we can be just as ruthless as necessary to stop monsters like you. The pulsation of the star intensified. All over the command center, Fomor officers looked at their screens with terrible admiration as their son danced to someone else's tune. Choose quickly, General, Astra continued. Every second you delay, the destabilization of the star becomes stronger. She will soon pass the point of no return. Tractor looked around at his destroyed command center, his defeated officers, the tactical displays showing human ships all over his system, the pulsating star that had become a weapon aimed at the heart of his people. For the first time in his long military career, he was completely outclassed, not only in firepower or tactics, but also in sheer determination. People had crossed lines that he had never imagined anyone would cross. All in the name of justice for people they've never met. "I give up," he said softly. The pulsation of the star immediately began to fade, returning to normal. Astra nodded once. "The coordinates for teleportation are being transmitted to your remaining ships. You and your senior staff will be taken aboard our ships for trial. Your fleet will be disarmed and escorted to neutral space. Your people will be allowed to recover under galactic supervision." "And the occupied territories?" the tractor asked. "They are already being returned to their rightful owners. The Vartok refugees are returning home. Stolen resources are redistributed to the victims' families. The war criminals who served under your command are being hunted down and brought to justice." Astra paused, and her expression softened a little. "General," you asked, "what could be better than your dominion?" The answer is simple. A galaxy where children don't have to die for the ambitions of adults. Where peace means protection for the innocent, not just comfortable chairs for diplomats. Where justice is not just a word that politicians use in speeches. The transfer ended, leaving the tractor alone with the wreckage of everything it had built. Outside his windows, the first human transports descended through the atmosphere like shooting stars. 3 cycles later, Astra Valian stood before the reformed Concordat of worlds and halls that had been rebuilt from scratch. The old chairs of power disappeared, replaced by a circular arrangement where no species sat higher than the other. "The protocol of responsibility is now in effect," she announced to representatives from across the galaxy. "Any species that commits genocide, enslaves populations, or wages war against non-combatants will face immediate intervention from the United Galactic Force." The crystalline form of the hierarch of crystallines pulsed with harmonious light. "And who will lead this force?" "Ambassador, who decides what is the basis for interference." Astra looked around the room, looking at the faces, both alien and familiar. Some still showed fear when they looked at her. Fear of a species that easily threatened to destroy a star to prove its point. Others showed respect for the people who put an end to the genocide when no one else wanted to act. "All of us," she said simply. "Together. With one difference from the old system." She activated a holographic display, showing ships of dozens of species working together on joint exercises. "When someone starts killing innocents, we won't discuss proper procedures for months. We will not fill out reports and schedule hearings and worry about diplomatic protocols. We will act quickly, decisively, and with overwhelming force." The psychic field of the cyanid representative rippled with uncertainty. "And if mistakes are made? If the innocent are harmed in these interventions?" "Then we will answer for our mistakes," replied Astra. "Just like we retaliated for our war against the Fomorian Dominion. But we will not be responsible for doing nothing while the monsters committed genocide, because we were afraid of making mistakes." She walked to the center of the room, addressing not only the assembled diplomats, but the entire galaxy listening through broadcast networks. "The universe is not a safe place," Astra said. "Evil exists. Cruelty exists. Species that would kill billions for profit, or pleasure, or simple convenience. The old Concordat believed that if we were civilized enough, patient enough, and diplomatic enough, this evil would somehow go away." She paused, letting her words echo through the room.